In this final section, I'll show you how to leverage splines. So if you remember previously, we looked at the different ways of sculpting hair, stylized hair like this. What I've done up to this point is more just the sculpting portion. These ones have a mixture of sculpting and spline type leverage. So if you need the hair more cleaner than it is now, this is how I would go about doing it in Zbrush. So these, you can see this is mostly sculpted and then just a few flyaways. For this style specifically, I would say that maybe just sculpting is fine. But again, I just want to show you how to do this in Zbrush. And generally speaking, this portion I would either do in Zbrush if it was like a more simple task of using splines, but if it was a more complicated one, then I'd probably go into Blender and do it in there. So if I use the insert multi-mesh brush, and I have a hair one, there's this one that I downloaded off the internet. You can find lots of them actually, they're out there, but if you do a search for this one, you'll find it pretty easily. It's this DE hair tubes. I think it's on Gumroad. Anyway, the first thing is I'm selecting this one that I created previously, which is this is just something that I created with the curve quad fill and then retopologizing to get to this point. But this is a dynamic subdivision level, so there's actually no subdivisions. It's just this one. And then I have dynamic subdivision levels turned on. The creasing is the reason why this is holding up the way it is. So it's just creasing on each poly group like that. Anyway, what this means is if you're going to use an insert multi-mesh brush, you can't have subdivisions. It has to be, those subdivisions have to be collapsed down. So because I have this one selected, I can do that. And there's some of these other hairs that I didn't really make, so I could maybe attempt to do a couple of those and just show you how that's done. Alternatively, if you needed to, you could sort of trace your sculpt and then replace pieces if you wanted to. Maybe I'll show you that one first. So if I select this DE hair tubes, there's a few different options. I'll just use the simple A for demonstration purposes. And the first thing that you would notice about this is if I draw this out, see it's kind of, it's hard to see here. Hold on. It's coming out backwards, right? I would really want the tip to be on the opposite side. If you want to fix that, the easiest way is to go into stroke, but I always dock these things on the side, so if I grab this little thing here and pull it over, I can dock it on the side, and that just makes it easier for me to get to these settings, because otherwise they keep closing on me. But it's really just about going to curve modifier, and there is an option to flip it horizontally, so you see that just like flip the curve. So that just means that now when it draws out, it's going to draw out the opposite way. So you can see it's doing that. So using these splines with insert multi-mesh brushes can be a little unwieldy. It takes some practice. There's a few main settings that you really want to think about when you're using it. I put it down in my UI over here. Honestly, I sort of like forget where they're supposed to be normally. Okay, so they're under here normally, stroke, and then curve, and then there's bend start, snap, lock start. You can see I just put them all here really. And this just makes it easier. Not all of them, but the ones that I mainly use. And I'll kind of go over that in a second. So if I just undo that, I can go back, and because I have snap turned on, I should be able to just snap to any surface at this point, even though it's not the selected object here, or subtool. So if I just draw this out like this, you see now I'm getting a similar shape. And then let's try it again with a smaller brush. Smaller brush will enable me to have a little bit more control. And so there's a lot of settings you can play around in here. Like you can see there's like a certain amount of segments on this, and there's settings that you can go into to change how many segments there will be. Of course, you can go in and also Google this stuff and find like every little detail information about it. It can get kind of deep, and I don't want to go through like every little thing. And also, this is one of those things where like I start to forget some stuff myself, and then sometimes I'll need to Google it also. But this is generally like what you would do. You just kind of like move these things around, and you can see that like I'm kind of changing my brush size here. If it's blue like this, I'm moving the spline. And this is the size of my brush when it's blue, right? So I can change the brush size while it's blue, but I can also change the brush size outside of here and it's not blue. And what this does is it changes like the thickness and how this draws this brush out. So if I just click on here now, because I changed the brush size over here, it's going to change the thickness over here. So it got a little thicker. So if I make this brush a little bit bigger and click again, it's a little thicker. So maybe that's the behavior that I want. So you can see that like I said, I use this mostly for just like if I need something really clean and fast in ZBrush, I'll do it this way. But sometimes there are like little hang-ups where it's maybe not reacting quite the way I want, and then you have to mess with more settings in the stroke. Sometimes like the settings for these brushes are actually in two places. A lot of times, like you'll find if you research this stuff more, it's generally in stroke and brush, and then in brush there's surface modifiers. So under these modifiers, there's like different settings here for how it works. And then you can control, I believe that stroke is oftentimes where you have step, and then you can make like how many verts there are on there. Again, I won't go too much in detail. I'll just show you the easier way of doing it, and which is just kind of using more default settings and then just paying attention to these things. And so if I wanted to make this longer at this point, probably the best way to do that is to turn on liquid or elastic. So if I click here, this is where I started. It's going to move the whole thing, right? But then let me just pull this back out here. And again, this is one of those things that takes some practice. But if I wanted to kind of like make this longer without messing up the beginning, I might say lock start, which is already on. And then I might turn on liquid. And then now, if it's not on, you're gonna see it's just like anchoring the beginning point. But I don't really want to move it too much now. I'll turn on liquid, and with liquid, it's like I can just start to make it longer without like messing up the other areas. See, and right there, I accidentally clicked again. Let's see if I change this curve step to something higher. See, that actually made less segments. So try something lower. See, now I have more, which gives me more control now, and like more of an ability because there's more of these verts on the spline. Like there's more of ability for me to curve it now. Maybe I'll turn off liquid for a second so I can pull this in and keep the rest the same. So this is a bit of a slow process, you'll see, and it's a little bit tricky as well. So I think that doing this might be frustrating for a lot of folks. I think it's worth getting used to because there's like potentially like more simple situations than what I'm showing you here in terms of times you might want to use it. Like the easiest one is if you just need to do like a straight flyaway. This kind of curved surface is maybe one of the hardest versions of what I'm talking about here using this. But I'm not gonna like try to match it perfect. And if I turn off snap, it'll stop like pushing to the surface, and it lets me just move things more in open space. But I suppose the best thing about me showing you like one of the harder circumstances using this is you can see how I kind of like use all the tools that I have here. So, and I'll isolate it sometimes and take a look and see what's happening. Let's see. If I turn the curve step down a little more, maybe I can get a little more control. Yeah. And so what'll happen a lot of times, see, that's funny because that just pulled it sort of outward. So a lot of times what I'll end up doing here is I'll just mess around with it up to a certain point. And then, oh, I see I still have liquid on, so that's why it's behaving some that way. I'll just pull this out to a certain point, and then I'm like, okay, well, this is maybe as challenging as I want to get with this, and then I can just be like, okay, maybe this is good for me now. And then from here, so since like with the tool selected, if I just click on something else, you see the curve went away, and now the curve is gone. Like now I've committed to that change, and so I can just like sculpt on this like I normally would anything. And so I can just like use my regular sculpting tools and maybe play around with this shape a little bit more and clean it up. And that's kind of the way that I would use it generally. If you need to do something else, there's other ways of doing this too. So I could potentially use this as a starting point too. So the one thing that you can think about a lot when you're creating this stuff is this is all just a stepping stone for how you're going to, like, the final results that you're going for. And what I mean is, like, oftentimes when working in 3D like this, your first attempt is not going to get you like the best or cleanest results. It takes a few attempts like building up towards a final result before you can say, okay, I'm good now. But you can see I'm just matching this up now, and it's becoming a lot cleaner, and I can just, use my methods of hard surface sculpting to sort of clean this. Also, looking at the wireframe, it's a pretty clean mesh, right? Like, because it was made with this insert multi-mesh, and I could actually kind of use some modeling tricks. And if I turn on ZModeler with insert brush on, I can just like remove some of these if there's too many, and what that'll do is when I do a dynamic subdivision on this, it just will instantly smooth things out a little bit better. So again, just kind of like getting the main shapes in there, and then I could actually like modify this more if I wanted to with some like sculpting tools or using the ZModeler. Starting to get that in there. But basically, like, as you can see, using this insert multi-mesh brush, like I am here, I can get generally cleaner results than I would with just the sculpting. If I needed something to be like super clean, this would be a way to do it. So, but again, this is the hard version, doing like this crazy spirally thing. So actually sculpting that might be the better option in this particular case. The situations that I was talking about that are really easy with something like this is if I just wanted to like create this one again, right? So I'll just like move this over. If for some reason I was like, this isn't clean enough, I want a very clean version of that. I think yeah, I'll leave the curve steps where they're at. Right, and then let me move this here, and then I'll just lock the start. So it is locked actually. And then if I pull that, right, and then maybe I need a little bit longer so I can turn on liquid, pull that out, turn that off. Looks fine. I mean, you can see how easily I can create that if it's something simpler. It's just like a flyaway, and now I just committed it, and then I'll just pull that into place. And again, if there's too many of these, I could, well, changing the curve step would make less of these naturally, but also if I really had to, I can go through and just start eliminating them. I've got dynamic subdivisions on, so it looks like there's more than there is, but even though there's like really a lot of these, by the way, if I have insert on and I hold alt when I click this, it's going to remove the whole loop. That's what you see me doing here. So there's really no reason for me to be so picky right now. I'm just kind of, I kind of get carried away sometimes and do things like this sometimes. I think we all do, right? But it's just about finding the right amount that I would actually need here once dynamic subdivision's on. So this is a more typical case when it's just like something easy like this. And so a dynamic subdivision is on, you see it's like perfectly clean, has a nice shape. The other advantage of using, so you can get cleaner shapes for sure than how you would with sculpting, right? But also, and then I can just pull this in here, so it's kind of gone. So if I click on something else, you can see that like this being in here, if it's not selected and like brighter than the thing behind it, now it's just become like a very clean piece. And I could, if I wanted to, just select this. Let's just for now, just hide it to show you what I mean. So, so maybe that's the piece that I want, and it's super clean. So, really easy stuff. But what I was going to say before I got distracted was one of the beauties of using this stuff, besides just getting it cleaner, is you can also easily switch to different shapes as well when you have the spline active. And like I said, it's a lot of times this is building up to the result that you want and not necessarily getting it the first try. So going back to what I said earlier about that, let me just show you this here. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna make this visible on its own and then invert that, and then I'm going to split hidden. So now this thing is on its own. Okay, it's got dynamic subdivisions on. So drawing this out, it's interesting because I have some pretty clean lines that are going through here. You know, I did model this a little bit like I was using some sculpting tools, so it's not as clean as it was originally. But let's say I just wanted to leverage this here. One thing I could do is, let's just see what happens. I'm going to see with the modeling tool, I'm going to go to crease, and then I'm going to say edge loop complete. And then I'm just going to select this one because it looks pretty straight. And so now I just made a crease along this that I made earlier. And I'm just going to look carefully at it and see. It looks like it went on the back side too, which I don't really want. So here's how I'm going to fix that. I'm just going to delete the caps so it can't continue. And so if I do an insert here, oops, insert, insert, and I'm just pulling this up here. So really, like, what I'm doing is I'm creating some, well, I can even do this and get a little bit of a curvature here going. But again, you can see I can use the modeling tools. If I just stick to like a few really simple things, it can be really handy in here. But I'm deleting the endpoint there. Say delete hidden, and over here there's a cap. I'll just select that, invert it. If I turn double on, it's easier to see the back faces. And then I'll say delete hidden. So now what's going to happen is there's an open end here, there's an open end here. So if I crease this, you'll see what I'm getting at. So crease, edge loop complete. It's not going to go on the back side. So I basically just have like one long loop here. And what I can do is, since I creased that, I'm just leveraging that now. I can go to curve functions, and under curve functions, this is stroke curve functions. I can turn off border, turn off polygroups, and then I can say creased edge. So what it's going to do is when I hit frame mesh, it's going to now create a spline right where I creased, and that's why I just wanted that one line. I didn't want like two lines because that would do some crazy stuff. I just want a normal like spline running across the whole length of this. And it was kind of easy to do because like when I drew the insert multi-mesh out here, you just get that for free. So if I say frame mesh, you can see all these points. Again, I don't necessarily need to have all those, so maybe I'll do this. I'll just go through with my insert and Z modeler, and I'll just remove a few and make it so I can control exactly how many verts run along here just by removing some of these, right? Let's do, I'll get rid of a few here too. Maybe that one, this one, this one. If you notice you're accidentally clicking like a polygon or something, it might do something you don't want when you have Z modeler on. So there's always the option of when it's on the polygon, just say do nothing. So whatever you select, you hit space, and then you can assign what function you want. So in this case, I'm using insert on the edges, and then holding Alt to delete. Simple modeling stuff. You can look up Z modeler stuff on the internet and find out more information, but how I'm using it here is really like 90% of the time how I use Z modeler. Just these basic like crease, sometimes polygroups, just adding, deleting edges, or changing edge flow slightly. Pretty basic stuff. So now I have less of these. I'll just go ahead and try that again. Maybe get a few less. I'm just thinking about how many verts will be running through here, and kind of like how many do I really need. Again, since I have insert on, I can actually add them back too if I wanted to. And there's also the option if I go to the multi-edge loop, and then I say, I think it's might be this one. Let's try that. Average normal, perhaps. Nope. Smooth elevation. So one of these options actually will create like it'll follow the curve. but you have to be under multiple edge loops. And clicked normal. There we go. So that's how you could do that. So if you wanted to, like, I could remove one, and then I could add it back in if I want to. See? And then it's maintaining the curve. So that's an option as well. Sometimes is helpful, but generally I just leave it off of this multiple edge loops and just do single edge loop rather. So now I'm gonna go ahead and do frame mesh, and you can see there's less points because I deleted a bunch of them. And this is the cool part, actually. So I'm gonna go back to my DE hair tubes. Now remember, there's a few options in here, and DE hair tubes is like different kinds of shapes to draw up. So if I just select this multi-thick, and then I just single click, see what that did? So it's too thin right now, so I'm just gonna make, so over here with my brush being red, make this much larger. Now I'm gonna click, see that? Make it a little smaller, click. And yeah, that's actually, maybe need some more steps in there. Let's see, so I should go to curve, steps, maybe that's should be lower. There we go. So I actually had to undo it and then click on it again. So now this is doing more like what I expected. Maybe I want like just a little more steps in here. And click. So now it's pretty smooth. And I can change the brush size, change this slightly. Right? And so now I have this pretty complicated looking type curve, and this is kind of cool. Like I can now switch to any of these I want. So this is a different style. This is a like much simpler style, right? This is the style we had before. This is another style, which is kind of cool, right? Go to thick A, see what that does. Cool. I can play with the offset on the surface. That might be in the brush setting, so you can see it can be a little tricky. So with this depth, I can change like where it places it on the front of that. Let's see if I'm right. If I just move this up, see how it moved it further off the surface. So if I wanted it closer, that actually pushes it through. See? So I just kind of pushed it a little closer. So that's cool. So here's another neat thing is I don't even have to use the same insert multi-mesh brush. I could find something else. I think I've got other things that I've downloaded that are like techie. There's actually ones that just ship with ZBrush as well. So let's just select this. This is one of the ones that ships with ZBrush. What happens if I select any of these? Wow, that's crazy. That's just inserting all kinds of stuff. So again, you would just play with the settings similarly to how I showed you. See that? It's pretty neat. So you can actually create, you can just draw an insert multi-mesh out and then use your settings and then use crease with ZModeler to actually make your own custom spline exactly where you want it, where you don't have to keep pushing things around. I mean, you could just like make some really simple geo that has like a straight edge loop, and then now you can use any of these, and you can just get this repeating shape. And then like, let's say, obviously this isn't going to be what I would want here, but once you have it there, you can just commit it and then modify it however you want. So Let's say I wanted this to follow here better. Let's see what this is going at. So I'll just select only this one. And then if I do kind of like half here, so I could just manually start stretching this out and create a taper. So, right, and maybe that's the look I want to go for, right? It's pretty cool, I think, and you can do a lot and you can do it really fast. But that's how I would go about cleaning up this hair, is I would potentially draw some of those out. This is like the more practical example. This is just like really simple stuff. If you want to get more complicated, you can start following like other pieces, like curly pieces, and use the modeler and then create a spline off of that, and then have full control, and then just clean it up with do whatever you want with just sculpting tools again. But this is like this kind of a shape would be really hard to do if you're like have this and then you're trying to place it like perfectly in alignment and curve it and turn it. Yeah, so pretty cool stuff. I guess like only like I'll just mention like one last thing before I call it a wrap here, is you can do something here. I'm gonna say DE hair tubes. Oops, losing the DE hair tubes. So I got that back. If I draw this out, just another one. Just want to show you this for demonstration purposes. And I'm modifying this. So again, I'm using generally lock start, lock end, those interactions. So if I lock start, I can kind of control it like that. If I turn off lock start, I can move the whole thing around. I can lock end rather, and that keeps this end point more stationary, less useful in most cases. Snap will keep it on the surface of something. Elastic is a lot like liquid, but you'll see as you play with it, it does some different stuff. And then liquid is like generally like forks, like making the spline longer than you originally drew it. And sometimes it's just like pushing things around. I think elastic might work better for pulling some stuff around sometimes, depending on what you're trying to do. So, yeah, and then if I lock the, let's see, okay, yeah, that turns off when I have these on. But anyways, I wanted to show you like those features again, those same ones that I use, and then also just this one trick, which is if I want to spiral this, then I would click on it. So not clicking anything, just clicking on it with the blue. And then if I hit control and then I drag while holding control, I can spiral. So this can like actually get you to create some really interesting type spirals if you need to. And depending on your brush size, that will change the behavior of the spiral. So like if it's a larger brush, then you're going to be spiraling like the whole thing. Smaller brushes spiral just the area that you're selecting. So if I have like a much larger brush, it's almost like I'm spiraling the whole thing. But like a very small one with the blue, just that little area more. So just something to know. There might be issues where you're drawing a spline and it's actually like misbehaving and spiraling on you. And so like if it was doing this and I didn't want that, I might actually come in here and just like try to unspiral it. Usually unspiraling is the thing that I want to do. But occasionally I'll spiral something on purpose. So that's kind of it as far as this goes. I showed you all the different methods. You should have a better understanding of like just approaching this stuff and like how you might want to plan for whatever results you're going for, and just knowing what results you want. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and feel free to comment if you have any more questions. See ya.